Lay down and relax. I shall read to you. Yes. I felt you arrive. Humans always think history is behind them. It is not. It stands very still, very patient, just out of sight. Tonight I will tell you of cities that vanished while their fires were still warm, of books that erased those who read them, and shadows that grew larger than the bodies they were meant to follow. I have watched your kind forget these things. Now, I will remind you. The hall that remembered every step. In a forgotten fortress in the mountains of Aragon lies a corridor that remembers every foot that has ever crossed it. By day it appears empty. Cold stone, narrow windows, dust at the edges. Yet, at night, travelers report the floor comes alive with invisible pressure, as though hundreds of unseen feet were brushing past in procession. Some hear armor creak where no knight walks. Others feel soft, small steps run ahead of them in the dark. One man swore he tripped over nothing and landed on something breathing. Another said the empty floor sighed beneath his boots like tired lungs. When torches guttered, shadows moved, without owners across the walls. The hallway had learned weight. It had memorized humanity. I once walked it alone, my claws ringing hollow against its memory. And even then, I did not feel alone. Some places do not forget. They accumulate. The monastery where prayers echoed before they were spoken. In the hills of Umbria stood a monastery where monks heard prayers whispered in the chapel before. Lips ever shaped them. Men knelt and felt absolution arrive too early, like rain before clouds formed. Confessions had already been forgiven by the time they were spoken aloud, and pilgrims entered, weeping with relief they had not yet earned. The monks initially believed themselves blessed. Then dread crept in. If prayer arrived early, did choice arrive at all? When a young brother heard his final confession echoed months before the illness came, terror fractured their faith. The abbey emptied within years. The chapel remains, and still answers before you drift too far into dreams, little human. A small favor from an old dragon. If you've enjoyed resting here beneath my wings, consider subscribing to my horde of stories. Each new believer helps me gather more treasures and avoid ravaging cities for loot when I'm low on funds. I'm retired now and my back makes sounds that haunt even me. Now, back to the story. The clockmaker who banished midnight. In Vienna lived a clockmaker obsessed with a single idea. If midnight never arrived, death would never follow it. He crafted clocks that skipped the darkest minute of night, removing its teeth one gear at a time. His devices ran smoothly, too smoothly, bypassing the hour when souls were said to loosen. At first, nothing changed. Then illness lingered longer than nature permitted. The aged failed to pass. Children were born, screaming and never stopped. Funerals became rare. But grief did not. When finally one night arrived without midnight's shadow, the city did not sleep. Not one soul blinked. Authorities smashed the clocks. Midnight returned like thunder. By morning, so did the dead. I visited his workshop afterwards. His final design still runs, waiting. The village that aged backwards at dusk. In northern Wales, there once existed a village that shed years each night. Residents aged forward. By day, then reversed slightly at dusk like water turning upstream. Wrinkles softened, backs straightened, hair darkened by candlelight. Strangers thought it blessing. Locals knew better. Children refused to sleep, for each night took more than it returned. Memories loosened. Names slipped. One woman grew young enough to forget her husband. Another's son aged into infancy and vanished into blanket and silence. Eventually, the town emptied. The houses remain, growing younger. The mirror room that contained other skies. In a noble estate near Salzburg lay a chamber covered entirely in mirror. Not vanity mirrors, something far deeper. The glass reflected skies that did not belong to the world outside its walls. Visitors watched stars unfamiliar rise where chandeliers should shine. Some stayed for days without hunger. Others claimed to see cities in clouds. One woman reached toward a constellation and did not return her arm. The mirrors were sealed. They still shine. I glimpsed a dragon flying red as flame across one. It was not me. The ferryman with no river. In Transylvania, a ferryman collected toll long after his river dried. Each dusk, he pushed his empty boat across nothing, rowing mist itself from bank to bank. Travelers laughed until they stepped inside and found water beneath their feet. None returned. The boat arrives nightly. The river does not. I once flew beside him. He nodded, still rowing. The tower that ate storms. In the lowlands of Holland, a black tower drank lightning. Storms bent toward it as though summoned. Clouds curled above its spire, and rain avoided all other fields when it stood. Villagers thought it blessing, until lightning struck within its walls without fire. Until wind entered without leaving. Explorers reported thunder clutched inside the stone like trapped beasts. The tower collapsed one summer sky. No ruin remains, but storms still hesitate there. The family that never left their house. In rural Brittany lived a family who barricaded nothing, yet never went outside again. Crops rotted, untouched, letters piled unread. Years later, the house was opened. The furniture was warm. The table was set. But no one was inside. Every mirror showed movement. The room where screams arrived late. Beneath a castle in Silesia lay a chamber where sound lagged in a peculiar way. A word spoken, entered silence, then returned hours later as echo. People laughed only to hear it twisted into sobs. At dusk, prisoners screamed and waited. The chamber remembered and replayed. I left quickly. Even dragons dislike delayed suffering. The chapel that glowed without fire. Deep in Tuscany stood a chapel lit by no candle, no sun, no oil. Light pooled gently at the altar and never wavered. No shadows formed inside. No dust floated. Visitors wept without knowing why. When the chapel collapsed in an earthquake, light floated upward like smoke. No ruin glows now, but night feels thinner there. The grave that answered questions. At the edge of a forgotten cemetery in Moravia stands a single gravestone with no name carved. Upon it, wind smooths dirt from its base, but never reveals a corpse beneath. Villagers once claimed. The earth around it felt warmer on winter nights, as though something were breathing just under the surface. The stone gained its reputation when a grieving mother, half mad with loss, knelt beside it and begged for word of her child. By morning, a name had appeared, etched into the marble as though written by unseen fire, not her son's, but her husband's. He died before week's end. Word spread. Men and women arrived quietly. They whispered requests through tears and trembling hands. Some asked when war would end. Others begged to know if love returned. A few pleaded only for an answer. Any answer at all. The stone replied, always, and never kindly. Each new mark carved itself deeper into the face, inscribing dates and outcomes, not of hope, but of certainty. A merchant asked whether his ship would arrive safely. The stone wrote, "Not for you." A soldier asked whether he would return. The stone etched, "You already didn't." Those who demanded knowledge left broken by it. Those who denied its truth returned weeks later, weeping to its accuracy. Eventually, the church ordered the stone pulled from the earth. The ropes snapped. The horses shied. No blade bit it. No fire marked it. Then, one night, it disappeared. But not entirely. Every few generations, another nameless grave appears in another field, and it answers again. I once pressed my claw against that stone and asked it a question I already knew the answer to. It did not reply. which frightened me more than any prophecy ever could. The world has gone quiet enough to hear itself breathe, and that is your gentle invitation to follow it into rest. All that was sharp today has dulled. All that was loud has drifted into stillness. Even history folds its wings at this hour and waits. You may set everything down here. Lay your worries beside the fire like old armor no longer needed. Let your thoughts wander away from edges and exits and return only when they feel safe. Tonight is not for solving. It is for soft forgetting and kinder remembering. I will hold what you cannot carry beneath my wings. Tomorrow will wait. Yesterday may sleep. Nothing important will be lost in the dark. Some things are only found when you stop reaching for them. And now, little dreamer, it is time for the gentlest journey of all. The one that goes nowhere and gives you everything. Sleep is not leaving. It is returning. And soon you will drift off into draconic dreams. Good night, humans.